This video is all about the science of miracles. In particular, I'm going to offer you a way to look at and understand your life, the world, the universe, everything in a new way, such that you'll see that there really are scientific equations, methods, principles that can completely explain how phenomena such as miraculous instant healings, or what doctors call spontaneous remission of disease. So buckle your seatbelt, it's going to be a fun ride. I am Brent Phillips. I am the founder and creator of the Awakening Dynamic System of Energy Healing and Higher Consciousness. And I'm making this video because I think I am qualified to speak a little bit about the intersection between science and energy healing, or prayer, or miracles, the divine, God, whatever words and phrases we want to put on that. So first I want to address, hey Brent, why in the world should I believe some rando YouTuber has this answer? Well, I'll say first of all, you don't have to believe anything I say. What you'll hear me say over and over in my videos and my classes with my consulting clients is that you don't ever have to believe anything I say just because I said it. What I would encourage you to do is have an open mind, hear what's offered, and then have your own experience before you draw your conclusions. So I would say, number one, I would encourage you to be an open-minded skeptic. Don't believe something just because someone on YouTube says it. No, that's silly. But at the same time, don't be so hemmed in by your existing prejudices and opinions and knowledge that you miss out on something that could bring you to a layer of greater truth, greater understanding. So again, don't believe any of this if you don't want to. That's totally up to you. But I would encourage you to listen, give it a shot, and see how it resonates within you. Fair enough? Fair enough. So, why did I pick the science of miracles? Well, I think I am qualified to do so because I have been both a legitimate scientist and a legitimate miracle facilitator. I would never call myself a miracle worker because Brent the human is not a healer, is not some awesome, perfect divine being. No, I'm just a man who learned a skill from another human teacher. But I have facilitated over 2,000 miraculous instant healings with my students and clients, as I have been a professional practitioner of energy healing for over 20 years as I make this video. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can go to my website, awakeningdynamics.com. We'll have the link in the description if you want to read more from some of my own clients and students in their own words. And so what happened to me was I grew up as a huge nerd, and I ended up at MIT for my undergrad. And I discovered the internet, and I became a computer science major, though of course anyone that went to MIT doesn't call it that. We call it course 6. There are no majors, there's courses, right? But for the rest of the world, you would call it a computer science major, and I kicked ass at MIT. I had a perfect 5.0 GPA in what is considered the most difficult and most competitive major. I also achieved something that, to my knowledge, has never been done before or after at MIT. I received letters of commendation in 2 different Course 6 core classes, 6001 and 6002, that I was taking at the same time as a freshman. Now, again, if you didn't go to MIT, especially if you weren't in engineering, that means nothing. But I used to be really smart, though now I focus on wisdom. But anyhow, I graduated from MIT, continued on to graduate school. I was part of the Telemedia Networks and Systems group under Professor Tenenhaus. We were developing what was called the View system, which was a combination of a fiber optic network along with advanced software that would do things like image processing and filtering. And long story short, we sent the first ever live audio video. And long story short, in 1994, we sent the first ever live synchronized audio and video stream over the web. I continued on to the graduate program. I qualified for my PhD, and I was working towards my PhD when the internet boom hit, and I left MIT to found a web development company and then an online game studio. And I created the world's very first real-time 3D first-person single-instance massively multiplayer role-playing game. Today they're called MOGs or MMORPGs, but I created the first one. So that's just a little about my credentials in tech. I have participated in real scientific research. I have had my name on papers that were submitted to journals, so I understand the process. though admittedly I haven't done science professionally since the 90s. What happened to me on my journey, I'll spare you all the details, but I thought I was going to be hugely successful. Instead, a physical health crisis destroyed my life. I lost my multi-million-dollar companies, and at 27 years old, the doctors sent me home to die. They said my chronic pain was so severe and my injuries and illnesses were so bad, there was no chance I could ever recover. 5 years of thrashing around, being desperate and hopeless, trying everything. And then after 5 years of thrashing around, being desperate and hopeless, trying all these kinds of conventional alternative medicine, healers and machines and magnets and all this crazy stuff, I had gotten so bad my right arm was completely paralyzed. I couldn't move it at all. And I found this crazy healer lady named Terry, and she did a session of energy healing with me, and I didn't think anything would happen. But surprise, at the end of our session, my frozen elbow went crack, and I could move it again. And that was a genuine life-changing miracle. And so in that moment, this geeky software engineer and video game developer with a bunch of MIT degrees decided to become a professional healer. And I have been learning and practicing energy healing ever since. That was back in 2003. And I have developed my own modality of energy healing called Awakening Dynamics, with the goal of bringing a very scientific, very precise, rigid, rational process to this world of energy healing and intuition and a lot of woo and fluff. So my goal is to run all this stuff through my fluff filter, take out the nonsense and the filler and the time waster, and leave you with nothing but the facts, nothing but the truth. So here we go. What is the science of energy healing? How does this work? Well, I will explain that. So here we go. What is the science of energy healing? I will explain that in this video. First, though, we need to more carefully define science and just So, what is the science of miracles? Are there equations and laws of physics that can actually explain a miraculous instant healing like I had when my elbow instantly healed? Or that my mother had when she was supposed to be dying of a very dangerous cancer and it instantly vanished from her body? Again, you don't have to believe any of this if you don't want to, but we got the medical scans and things, so believe what you will. I'm just going to share my truth, my experience with you, and the hope that it resonates. So before we can get deep into the science, we do need to clarify a few terminologies. Before we get deep into the science, we need to spend just a minute covering some terminology. In order to understand science, we need to realize what the scientific method is. Basically, you observe something, you create a hypothesis or a theory over how you think it works, and then you run experiments to generate evidence to support it. And so you have to make predictions supported by what's called scientific evidence. And many people don't realize, if you haven't studied science, that creating scientific evidence is really difficult. It's a very rigid process. It takes highly educated, highly skilled people years or decades and often millions or tens of millions of dollars to create scientific evidence. That's very difficult. It's doable, but again, expensive, time-consuming, a lot of expertise. By contrast, there's also a term called anecdotal evidence, and that's basically things you hear. And so as an example for instant healings, I made the claim that I've seen over 2,000 miraculous instant healings in my clients and students. And by miraculous healing, I don't mean, oh, gee, I like the energy, Brent. I mean things that show up on medical scans and confound doctors. However, that is not scientific evidence, because scientific evidence must be created under very rigidly controlled conditions, generally as part of what's called a double-blind study. And so all the miracles I've seen and the testimonials and even the medical scans are what are considered anecdotal evidence. They were not created under very rigid, controlled, double-blind conditions, and therefore would not be suitable to be citing that evidence as part of a formal scientific paper. Now, Anecdotal evidence doesn't mean it's wrong, it just means it's not scientific. And so what I'm going to offer you here in this video is a theory on how the laws of physics and chemistry, biology, the equations that govern the laws of the universe actually explain how miraculous instant healings occur. But it is a theory because I can only support it at this point with anecdotal evidence. That being said, the anecdotal evidence is overwhelming. So I think there's something there, but I want to be crystal clear. This is not intended as a rigid scientific proof to be published in a peer-reviewed journal. Now, I would love to do that. That would be one of my passions in life, to have the money, the budget, the expertise, the partnership to actually do a formal scientific study of energy healing and how miracles occur. But that has not been put in my path yet. So I will give you my best explanation, the best theory we have going, with the hope that maybe sometime down the line, we will be able to create the true scientific evidence as part of a formal process. So I hope that makes sense. So let's get into it. What is the science of miracles? Well, very simply, there are 3 scientific breakthroughs that give us what we need to understand how miracles occur. And I'm going to briefly cover all 3 of them, and then I'm going to pull it together so you can see, at least from one perspective, how miraculous instant healings can occur. There's an old saying that God works through nature. Yes. When we experience a supernatural miracle, what's really going on is we're simply experiencing a phenomena that cannot be explained by our current level of science and technology. But God works through nature. So there is a scientific explanation. We just have to look for it. I should also say that if you're a healer or you're a life coach or an intuitive or something like that, of course you don't need to understand the science to be a great healer or to make money or to help people. Of course not. But if you're like me and you're kind of a head case and you like to understand things, this can actually be quite powerful. You may find that giving your mind a model to understand miracles allows the ego and the mind to relax and step back and let them flow. Because here's a hint, as long as your mind is rigidly holding on to your world and your life, it's really difficult to slip a miracle in. So I offer this to all the head cases, the rational people, the scientists that like to understand things. I think this can really help you to open up to a new dimension of life. So let's talk about these 3 experiments. What are they? Well, number 1, we're going to cover what is called the uncertainty principle. It comes out of quantum mechanics. Number 2, we're going to talk about Schrodinger's cat. Again, number 2, we will talk about Schrodinger's cat, which was a thought experiment. And number 2, we will talk about Schrodinger's cat, which was a thought experiment that helped to move forward, again, quantum physics. And lastly, we'll cover the double slit experiment, which is all about trying to understand the fundamental nature of light. So here we go. Let's start with uncertainty. And so I'm going to do my best to put no math and no equations in this video, but I just have to say, anyone that's into math or science, the equations I think make it way easier. I'll put them in the description. But for the rest of the normal people out there, don't worry, you're not going to see any math, any equations, nothing that'll make your head hurt. I'm going to explain it. I'm going to do my best to explain it to you in simple, everyday language. And so the uncertainty principle was discovered by Werner Heisenberg. This is part of the foundation of what we call quantum physics today. And we know this is real and it works because every piece of electronics on the planet is based on quantum physics. You couldn't be watching this video if quantum physics didn't work. So these things we're going to discuss in the quantum world are not just good ideas, they're the law. Kind of like we used to joke when I was at MIT. We used to say, gravity, it's not just a good idea, it's the law. And it's really funny because that's back in the times when they had the seatbelt campaigns, when they had the new seatbelt laws. Seatbelts, it's not just a good idea, it's the law, right? So yes, gravity, not just a good idea, it's the law. Same thing with quantum physics. So what is uncertainty? It's actually pretty simple. It says that there is a fundamental uncertainty in nature. And it goes like this. You can either know where something is, or you can know where it's going. but you can't know both beyond a certain precision. And you go, what? That makes no sense, Brent. I can sit here in my chair in my office and I'm not going anywhere and I know exactly where I am. So, first thing to know about uncertainty is uncertainty only applies at the subatomic level. On what's called the macroscopic world, people, cars, buildings, plants, planets, rivers, cities, everything we experience with our human biology, uncertainty is irrelevant because it's so tiny. These numbers are so small that uncertainty only becomes relevant when we're talking subatomic scale. And so here's how it goes. I want to give you an intuitive understanding of uncertainty. Let's say you want to measure where you are and where you're going. Well, the more precisely you measure where you are, the less you know about where you're going. It's called position and velocity. So you can know one but not the other. Or you can know the other but not the first one. So if you really want to know where the position is, you can measure the position very precisely. But when you do that, you lose the velocity, and vice versa. And I know you're going, oh my gosh, this is kind of weird. Let me explain this to you in a way that I think everybody can understand. Because again, it seems like it's wrong. It's like, hey, I can know where I am and where I'm going. Well, again, subatomic scale, right? So this is how it goes. Imagine we go down to the pool hall to play a game of pool. And there's the room, and we got a pool table, and we got some cue sticks, and some pool balls, right? And let's say we take the cue ball, the big white ball, and we put it in the middle of the table. And then we turn off the lights, so you can't see anything. Okay, where is the cue ball? Well, we think it's in the middle of the table, right? But we don't know for sure, do we? You don't. Because your buddy might have snuck up and moved it after you turn the lights off, right? So you think you know where it is, but you're not 100% sure. So what do? Well, if the lights are off, you pull into your pocket and pull out your cell phone and turn on the flashlight. And you start looking around the room. And you go, oh, there it is. When you shine your light on the cue ball sitting on the pool table, you see where it is, don't you? And you go, hey, look, the cue ball's still sitting right in the middle of the pool table. Awesome. From that experiment, you would go, hey, Brent, I think you're an idiot because I just measured where it is and where it's going. The cue ball is sitting right in the middle of the pool table and it ain't going anywhere, right? Velocity 0, at least relative to the Earth. Okay, I hear ya. Here's why that works. When you turn on your flashlight and aim it at that ball, the size and mass of the cue ball is so much greater than the energy in the light. And so let me ask you this. Can you turn on the flashlight on your cell phone and aim it at a billiard ball and roll it across the table? No, it doesn't work that way. Why? Again, the amount of energy in the light is way too small compared to the size of the ball. So you can shine 100 flashlights on it, it ain't going anywhere. Okay, so that's what we call macroscopic reality. But now we're going to shrink down. Let me know in the comments if you remember the inner space ride at Disneyland. I think it shut down in the 70s, where you get smaller and smaller and smaller. I loved it when I was a kid. Totally cool. And so in inner space, they made you smaller and smaller and smaller. So we're going to do that here. We're going to take the bar, we're going to take the room with the pool table, all the cue balls, all the people, all the cue sticks, right? And we're going to shrink them down to a subatomic level so that that billiard ball is smaller than an electron. Okay, now what happens? Well, we shrink down and we turn off the lights. Where is the tiny electron-sized cue ball? You don't really know. You think it's still on the table, right? Because it was there a minute ago. But when the lights are off, again, you don't know where it is. And maybe your buddy moved it, trying to be a jerk, right? So you take out your tiny little cell phone, and you turn on the flashlight, and you look around. And oh, there it is. But here's what happens. Because the electron is so small, this tiny, tiny, tiny little cue ball, just one photon of light that comes off your phone and hits it puts so much energy into the system that it moves it. That's how uncertainty works. And here's what it comes down to. In order to observe or measure something, you must disturb it, usually by shining light, right? So if you're in a dark room and you want to find the cue ball, you turn on a light, right? But when you turn on that light, the light will hit the cue ball. And if the cue ball is small enough, just one photon of light has enough energy to push it somewhere else. This is the intuitive explanation of uncertainty. So what does it mean? Well, it means, first of all, that we cannot observe or measure something without disturbing it, without putting energy into it. Again, you turn off the lights. In order to see something, you have to turn on the light. The light, when it hits something, puts energy into it. However, this only becomes relevant at subatomic scales. At the level of our human biology, things are so big and so massive, a little bit of light won't move them. And if you don't believe me, go down to a pool hall, turn on a flashlight, see if you can move the balls around. No, you can't. Light's not strong enough, right? Therefore, if you wish to measure something, you have to put light on it. And every bit of light you put on it disturbs it and moves it somewhere. This is the rough explanation of uncertainty, which tells us that, again, you can either know where something is. This is the high-level explanation of uncertainty. So you can either know where something is or where it's going. But you can't know both beyond a certain precision. What does it mean in terms of our lives? What it means is anything can happen. That mathematically, anything can happen. But here's the catch. Again, let's imagine we're in a tiny little pool bar, and we got a tiny little pool table, a billiard ball the size of an electron, right? And a bunch of tiny people with tiny cue sticks. And so we're going to play pool. And we turn off the lights, and then we shine the light briefly on the flashlight to find the cue ball. Then we turn it off. So where is the cue ball? Well, here's what's interesting. It's probably not in the center of the table. Why? Because remember, when the light came off your phone and hit the cue ball, it put energy into it and it moved. Where did it go? Well, the universe is not complete chaos. Where the ball gets moved to when you put light on it is governed by what's called a probability function. And it's really simple. The ball is highly likely to be close to the center of the table. We'll say there's a 90% probability the ball is within an inch of the center of the table. Why? It's likely that if you put a little bit of energy in it, only moved a little bit, right? But it could be anywhere. This is what the math tells us. Let's say that there's a 9% chance that the ball rolls to the edge of the... So we have a 90% chance that the ball is in the middle of the table. We have a 9% chance that it rolled across the table but stayed on the table. We have a 0.9% chance that the ball rolled across the table, off the edge, and onto the floor. We have a 0.09% chance that the ball rolled off the table, off the edge, onto the floor, and rolled out the door onto the street. We have a 0.009% chance that the ball rolled off the table, onto the floor, out the door, onto the street, and 7 blocks down. And so you see how it goes, right? The further away we get, the lower the probability. But what the math tells us is when we disturb a system by putting light on it, that particle could be anywhere in the universe. This is really the math. But the physics, the math tells us when we put a little bit of light on it, that particle could go anywhere in the universe. But the further it goes, the lower the probability. So here's the takeaway. Imagine that I'm eating lunch at a taco stand in Los Angeles. There is some very small but finite probability that every atom in my body will spontaneously teleport and put me sitting next to a hot dog cart in New York City. In fact, when I was in high school, I took classes at University of California, Irvine. And there was a professor there that had the reputation that at the end of every lecture, he would turn and take his eraser and throw it at the chalkboard. And the students would be like, "Why are you doing that?" And he would say, Quantum physics tells us that if I throw this eraser at the chalkboard enough times, one day it'll go right through the wall. That's what we're saying here. Awesome. So next up on our journey, we're going to talk about Schrodinger's cat. Before we go there, I'm just going to say, hey, if you like this video, if you want to see more, YouTube needs to know. Please take a moment, hit like, hit subscribe, hit the little bell to get notifications, send this to your friends. Awesome. So Schrodinger's cat, another important thought experiment in quantum physics. I'll let you guys know watching this, I am an animal lover, and I have modified this thought experiment so that no thought cats are harmed, but it leaves the science intact. And here's how it goes. It's actually pretty easy. Imagine you have a cardboard box that has a lid, and you have a cat. And you also have a little mechanism that has a timer. So what happens is you put the cat in the box, you close the lid, and exactly 1 minute after you close the lid, there's a machine inside that has a 50% chance of releasing kitty sleeping gas, and kitty goes to sleep, takes a nap, and has a 50% chance of releasing kitty hypercatnip gas, so kitty is wide awake and bouncing around. 50-50. So here's the question. If we put the cat in the box, close the lid, wait 1 minute, is the cat awake or is the cat asleep? And I'd love for everyone, take a guess in the comments. 50-50, right? Do you think the cat is awake or do you think the cat is asleep? And while you're putting in your comment, let me just say, I don't think Schrodinger ever really spent time around cats. Because if you actually took a cat and put him in a box and closed the lid, most likely one of two things would happen. Either the cat would simply curl up and go to sleep on their own. They're like, hey, this is cozy, out. Or the cat would be pissed and scratch and fight like hell to get out of the box. They just carve a hole in it with their claws if they had to, right? We'll ignore that for now. We'll allow Schrodinger his thought experiment. Is the cat awake? We will allow Schrodinger his thought experiment. So is the cat awake or asleep? Here's the answer. Until we open the lid and look, the cat is both awake and asleep at the same time, with some probability. That's the answer. And if you're going, good, I'm here to blow your mind. This is how our universe works. It's that simple. Nothing is real until it's observed. Nothing is real until it's been observed. Before then, it's in probability. And so imagine you go to a casino in Las Vegas and you roll the dice at the craps table. What's the result? Well, until someone looks at those dice, it's every result, all 36 pairs of dice that are possible, with some level of probability. So to get snake eyes would be a 1 in 36 probability. To get double sixes would be a 1 in 36. You add together all the different possibilities, they sum to 1. But that's the thing. Until we look and observe the system, it stays as what's called a wave function, a probability. It's only when we open the lid and look at the cat, which remember imparts energy into the system, right? We must disturb a system to observe it. Only then does the universe make a choice. The cat is either awake or asleep. And again, Schrodinger made a really bad choice with cats, because if there's any animal that can be awake and asleep at the same time, it's a cat, right, people? Of course. But anyhow, I think the science of it is not disturbed by that, just a poor choice of the animal. But that's Schrodinger's cat. And so realize this is your universe. In terms of the lottery, this is what my first teacher, Terry, said. She said, as long as you haven't seen the result, you can still manifest winning the lottery even after the draw. Why? Because to you, it's still in probability until you see the result. I'll also warn you, if you're not really into science stuff, you may take 2-3 views of this video before it really sinks in. No hurry. Watch it as many times as you like. But it is hard to wrap your head around this stuff at first. So that's Schrodinger's cat. Now we're on to the third experiment, then I'm going to pull it all together. Before we go on to the third experiment, I want to say, if you want to learn more about this, sort of Brent's perspective on a more scientific, rational, evidence-based approach to energy healing, intuition, higher consciousness, enlightenment, that's my life's journey. I'm here to bring these two worlds together. If that's you, would love to see you come to one of my Healathon webinars. They're completely free. We'll blow your mind. We'll bring you into the quantum field. We'll show you how to clear subconscious blocks. I think you'll love it. Or we'll put a link down below if you want to contact me for a private session. Be happy to work with you. So back to our science. What is the double slit experiment? So long story short, for hundreds of years, scientists argued about the nature of light. There was a camp over here that said light is a wave. And there was a camp over here that said light is a particle. And what it reminds me of is, if you remember back in the old days, 20th century, they had the beer commercials. Is Miller Lite less filling or does it taste great? Is it less filling or does it taste great? It's kind of funny. The light argument was like that. You got one camp, we'll call them less filling, that says light is a particle. We got the other camp that says tastes great, that says light is a wave. Who's right? Well, to figure it out, they created what's called the double slit experiment. And we'll put up some pictures for you to make it easy. So here's the first picture. What you'll see is there's a light bulb, then there's a piece of cardboard with a slit in the middle, and the light comes off the light bulb, goes through the opening in the cardboard, and creates an image on a photo plate. And the thing you see on the right, that's just the photo plate turned sideways so you can see it. And I know it seems a little complicated at first, but once you get it, it's very, very easy. What we see here is the result that's exactly what we expect. Light comes off the light bulb, goes through the opening, and creates an image on the photograph. Pretty easy, right? You go, hey Brent, why did it take a bunch of egghead physicists to do this? Well, we're just getting started. You may go, hey Brent, why did it take a bunch of egghead physicists hundreds of years to figure this out? Well, we're just getting started. This is just the first part. So according to this experiment, it appears that light is a particle, doesn't it? Imagine the light bulb is like a little machine gun spitting out light bullets. The light that gets stopped by the cardboard, the photo stays dark. The light goes, for the light that goes through the slit in the middle, it creates an image of light on the photo. Again, very simple, intuitive, it's what we expect. And so the particle people went, look, we're right, light is a particle. But then the wave people said, no, 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 don't go too fast. You did it wrong. You need to put two slits in the cardboard. So we'll put up the image here for the second part of it. You'll notice we got a light bulb. We got a piece of cardboard with two slits in it. And then we still have a photographic plate to capture the image. And so here's why this is interesting. What most of us would expect is that if you do this, what you'll see on the photo is you'll have one chunk of light opposite each hole. That makes sense, right? If the light goes through a hole, it creates an image. If it gets blocked by the cardboard, it stays dark. That is not what happens. Instead, what you see on the photographic plate is a series of alternating bands of light and dark. And you're like, what? And so the wave people said, look, we're right, light is a wave. Because what happens is light waves go through both slits, come out the other side, and then interfere with each other. It's called a wave interference pattern. And you will see an alternating pattern of bands of light and dark. And so unlike a lot of things you see on TV, you're welcome to try this at home. Get a light bulb, get a couple pieces of cardboard, right? What you'll find is if there's one slit in the cardboard, it looks like the first picture. There's a band of light opposite the hole. Duh, right? If you put two slits in the cardboard, what you will see on your wall is what matches the second picture. There will be an alternating set of bands of light and dark because the waves interfere. And so you go, what's going on here, right? Is light a wave or a particle? We seem to have evidence for both. And so they came up with a third version of the experiment, and we'll put up the picture here. Same light bulb, same piece of cardboard with two slits, same photo plate. But now we're going to install a little detector and measure the light as it comes through the slits. And when we do this, it changes the result. And again, this is not just a good idea, this is proven science. When you measure the light, it changes the result. And what we see is two bands of light opposite where the holes are. light seems to be acting like a particle again. So what gives? Here it is. It's really easy. The nature of light is this. It acts as a wave until it is observed or measured. At that point, the observation or measurement disturbs it, puts energy into it, and it becomes a particle. That's how it works. So when the light goes through the two slits without being measured, it's a wave, and waves interfere. When we measure the light, we turn the wave into a particle. And the particles just show up as clumps of light opposite the hole. Pretty awesome, right? Cool stuff. So these three experiments give us a foundation to create a compelling theory that can explain phenomena such as miraculous instant healing. And this is how it goes. I'm not going to get too into the metaphysics here, but the nature of our life is kind of like a computer, that your computer monitor does not have a still image. What it has is the software redrawing the image maybe 60 times a second. And your life works exactly the same way. Your entire physical body is created out of nothing by your consciousness many, many times a second. I don't know what the exact number is, but it's way bigger than 60. My feeling is it's related to what's called the Planck length from quantum physics, but don't worry about that. It's just a lot. And so there is literally information code inside of you that tells the universe how to create your body. And so when we change the code, we change the result. Anyone that's used a computer or a phone knows that, right? You launch a new program or app, the whole screen changes. Why? The screen is just instructions from the software on what to draw. So our subconscious mind tells the universe how to create our body and life anew again in each moment. And so what determines these probabilities? What determines the probability that you're going to be a millionaire tomorrow or if you're going to be broke? What's the probability that a year from now you'll be healthy and have no pain and loving your life versus having some terrible accident or injury? Well, it's simple. What determines the probabilities of your life is your subconscious beliefs. That's what determines it. Not going to go on a lot about that now, but I got all sorts of cool videos, trainings, programs. I would love to teach you how to master your subconscious mind. And so when I had my first miracle healing with Terry, I had had a surgery that left my right arm totally paralyzed. I couldn't move it at all. And it was frozen like that for 4 or 5 months. And what was really going on was every moment someone was rolling dice somewhere. And if the right number came up, my elbow would spontaneously and instantly heal. If you talk to doctors that have worked with people with serious diseases, they all have stories about what they call spontaneous remission. That just one day the person got better for no reason. Why? This is the nature of life. It's all in probability until it's observed. So my health tomorrow is in probability because it's not tomorrow yet. But when tomorrow arrives, I observe it, I feel my body, I see my body, the waves become particles. And so what happened in that session with Terry is she spent an hour with me clearing what she called subconscious blocks. That changed the probabilities. And at the end of the session, she did a healing process and essentially asked the divine to come and heal my arm. And it worked. There was a loud cracking and I could move my arm again. So it's pretty simple. Life is governed by quantum physics. So the big picture is actually pretty simple. Everything in our universe obeys the laws of physics. Quantum physics is the most relevant and interesting here because it tells us that we are creating everything out of consciousness in each moment. Because again, uncertainty, Schrodinger's cat, double slit. So your life exists in probability until you experience it. And if you want to change those probabilities, you might want to get into the subconscious. Do some block clearing. Or not. Live your life in any way you want. But I have found it one of the best, most incredibly transformative, positive things I've ever experienced. And if you don't think it's real, I just feel bad for you. The same way that if you tried to tell me gravity isn't real, I'd be like, hey man, have your opinion, but there's enormous evidence that gravity is real. So if you don't like this, that's okay. I can't control whether you like the truth or not. My job is simply to deliver to you the truth in the best way that I can. My job is to try to deliver to you the truth in the absolute best way I can. So I hope you enjoyed this. I have given you what I think is quite a compelling and elegant theory that explains the science of miracles. Would love to hear your comments and questions. I aim to answer all of them myself. If you'd like to learn more about this, come to my free Healathon webinar or contact me possibly about a private or a group session, and I would love to work with you. So I hope you found this awesome, entertaining, informative, maybe even transformational. And until I see you next time, please take care and namaste.